Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're all very welcome to this meeting of the Theology Society. Today we're very honoured to have John Smeaton with us from the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children. Before I introduce John, I just want to make some quick announcements. The Theo is going to be having free guided meditations for members, it's going to be every Friday in the atrium at 7 p.m. And the first week, well, for the first couple of weeks we're going to try some Zen meditation, so you're all more than welcome to come along. Just bring your membership cards, and that's like totally free. The second announcement is we got confirmation today on our trip away, so we're going to be on to Dunderry Park on the 10th of April, where we'll be an overnight stay, where we're going to do some shamanic drumming. Hopefully we're going to do some mindfulness meditation and maybe one other kind of experiential meditation as well. It'll be all vegetarian food, and it'll be €50 for the trip. That's your bus, your accommodation, your evening's entertainment, all your classes. It should be a great trip. So just talk to one of the committee if you're interested. Moving on to tonight then, as I said, we're delighted to have John with us. John's been involved with the Society, if I'm not mistaken, since 1974, and has been full-time with them since 1978. So a great service to the provider. Great director in 1996. He's here to talk to us today about the topic of why Ireland should not change our current abortion laws. So please welcome John speaking.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. It's a great privilege, of course, to speak here. And both here in Trinity College but also here in Ireland. And I do have a family interest in that my wife is from County Meath, therefore my children are Irish citizens, and I've had a long-standing strong interest in trying to support pro-life work here in Ireland. Now, there is perhaps no more important subject than abortion, because abortion is a matter of life and death, and for the unborn child it's literally a matter of life and death, but for the mothers of the unborn, the physical, psychological and spiritual consequences of abortion can have a disastrous impact on the way that they experience life. For many women it represents a slow but inexorable kind of spiritual death. Abortion is inextricably linked with the sexual revolution. The demand for sexual license has brought with it the demand for abortion to remove the unwanted consequences of sexual activity. The real reasons for the demand for legal abortion are routinely obscured by a dishonest appeal on the part of our opponents to reasonable public concerns about maternal mortality and backstreet abortions, and by sweeping under the carpet the ill effects of abortions generally and particularly on women, and by the emotional exploitation of so-called hard cases. I just want to say very briefly here as well that what you're experiencing in Ireland today, where abortion is such a hot topic, is a consequence too of a worldwide determined political objective on the part of the world's most powerful politicians, including Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, to spread abortion on demand to every country in the world. And they're joined in that by powerful United Nations bodies. I just mention that because I think it's very important to see what you're experiencing in the sort of worldwide geopolitical perspective. Now, today, Ireland is fast approaching the time when it will again be called upon to decide what kind of society it wants to be. So, as you await the expert report, expert in quotation marks, on abortion to report, does Ireland want to keep up with the Joneses of other nations and to sweep away its historic constitutional protection for the unborn? Or does Ireland want to maintain its exemplary commitment to protect the rights of all human beings without distinction of any kind? So, let me address part of the subject of the talk, the rights of the unborn. I want to deal with this subject by appeal to a science, to reason, and to our human obligation to respect the rights of all citizens impartially. And the right to life is, of course, the sine qua non of all other human rights. Now, Article 40.3.3 of the Constitution of Ireland says this: the state acknowledges the right to life of the unborn and, with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother, guarantees in its laws to respect and, as far as practicable, by its laws to defend and vindicate that right. In Irish, the phrase of the unborn is na mio gombreth, which means of the living, in the plural, not yet having been born. And the text in the Irish language is the governing text. The Constitution as it stands is clear and unambiguous. The unborn child is a human being who has the right to life, and Ireland is committed to protecting that right. But the subject matter that Michael has given me, the rights of the unborn, seems to leave out of consideration the equal right to life of the mother, which is identified in the Constitution as intricately linked with the rights of her unborn child. Now, so it's simply not possible for me to speak about the rights of the unborn without considering the rights of the mother, which I will attend to immediately. The rights of the mother are not a footnote to the discussion, to the rights of the unborn. They must both be considered at one and the same time, since according to the Constitution and according to international law, to which I'll return later, mother and child have equal rights. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has that balance when it says, and I quote, "Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection." What is the situation of a woman who is pregnant and who does not wish to be pregnant? Now, one can't generalise from the experience of some women to all women. However, one can and should confront the reality which many women experience. Many women faced with a pregnancy which they do not want may be, or fear being, cold-shouldered by family and friends, abandoned by the father of the child, and bullied into making decisions that they would rather not make. And they may also have a well-founded fear of a lifetime of poverty if they choose to keep the child. Tragically, the so-called choice for abortion in countries which have legalised it is often no choice at all. The provision of legal abortion provides an economic escape route for the state, for the government, since they will not have to make any special provision for women distressed by an unplanned pregnancy. Now, in 2005, the British government, the Labour government under Tony Blair as it then was, published a document which spelled out the cost to the state of making abortion illegal in the light of an anti-abortion bill which was then before Parliament. And the British government estimated that the cost to the National Health Service of the extra births, at the average cost of a birth of £3,113, £17, to be £120 million, and the extra benefit and social care costs to the resultant teenage mothers to be £140 million a year. Now, the British government also estimated that social care costs would rise by the order of £175 million a year if abortion was made unlawful over a 17-year period involving children being taken into care. Since the government said, and I quote, "Discussion with stakeholders consistently indicated that a significant proportion of children born as a result of unintended pregnancies would suffer hardship, deprivation and abuse." The fact is that societies which provide abortion often have no adequate provision for alternatives to abortion for these women and for their born children. The woman finds herself caught between a rock and a hard place, with a choice that is no real free choices. All other reasonable avenues, as she would understand it at the time of crisis, being closed to her. So, why do some women want an abortion? There are a variety of reasons, one or more of which may obtain in a particular case. The woman fears a life of poverty, unable to see how she can house, clothe and educate and feed her children. She knows or believes that she will be cold-shouldered by her family or by the father of her child, and perhaps even friends if she proceeds with the pregnancy. The prospect of finding it harder to attract a spouse or long-term male partner if she keeps a child may be of concern to her. She may be under subtle pressure from social workers to abort rather than to keep the child or to give the child up for adoption. She feels inadequate or unable to care for the child on her own. Or she has a fear of caring and raising a child with a disability. Or she's the victim of domestic violence and does not want to have a child with her abuser, fearing that her child may become the victim of her abusive partner. Now, the medical literature indicates a strong correlation between abortion and domestic violence. In Sweden, for example, where legal abortion is long established and the abortion rate is comparatively high. While pregnancy from rape and incest are mercifully uncommon, that cannot be said of pregnancy in abusive relationships, of which some degree of sexual coercion is a major indicator. In short, women are abandoned to their so-called free choices because society refuses to offer proper support and assistance. But if she has an abortion, it's she, the woman, who is most often left to bear the psychological, physical and spiritual consequences of knowing that she has had her child killed. And of course, if she's in an abusive relationship, nothing is done to remove her or alleviate that terrible situation. Now, a fuller discussion on all these issues can be found in a chapter by Selina Ewing, Evidence-Based Counselling, Social Policy and Alternatives to Abortion, in a book called Common Ground, the book edited by Dr. John Fleming and Nicholas Tonti Filippini. I'll give you the full details if you'd like to know about that afterwards. The melancholy reality is that so-called pro-choice societies, in those societies, women are damned if they do and damned if they don't have an abortion. And the challenge for any humane society is to be so organised that killing the innocent remains unlawful, while at the same time making reasonable provision for women to have their real needs met when faced with an unintended, unplanned or unwanted pregnancy. The facts of the matter are that according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I quote, motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. And I quote, all children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. The state has an obligation to offer appropriate protection and support to mothers and their offspring for as long as those offspring remain children. Now, if there is to be any sensible discussion of the rights of the unborn, we must first establish what do we mean by the word unborn. And here there is clear, unambiguous scientific data upon which we can rely. The biological sciences are clear that we have a human being following the successful fertilisation of a human oocyte with a human spermatozoa. The issue of abortion arises when other human beings terminate the development of the embryonic human being with the intention that the child dies. The science here is clear, despite attempts by some scientists to move beyond their expertise as scientists and to begin theorising about notions of personhood. If the unborn child is a human being, then the state has a moral obligation to protect the fundamental rights of the unborn child equally with those of any other set of human beings, including and especially the right to life. Now, there are those who want to exclude the unborn from moral consideration on account of their personal and private philosophical beliefs about personhood. But an individual's humanity is decided by the biological facts of the matter, and no one has the right to exclude others from the human family on the basis of their personal beliefs. The science is objective and clear. Philosophical opinions on the non-personhood of embryos are just that, opinions. Let me explain further. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948, is founded upon the notion that there are human values, and these values are inherent in the human individual. In the preamble, the Declaration states, and I quote, that the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world is the, and I quote, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. So, all members of the human family have an inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights. The unborn are clearly members of the human family. Ergo, they enjoy the same rights as any other human beings and have the same right to have their human rights protected by the state. That international law does envisage human rights protection for the unborn can be seen, for example, in the provision dealing with capital punishment in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966. And I quote, Sentence of death shall not be imposed for crimes committed by persons below 18 years of age and shall not be carried out on pregnant women. Now, in this provision, a state may execute a woman only when she's not pregnant. The innocent are not to die along with the guilty. Indeed, the travaux preparatoires, or the official record of the negotiation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, makes this abundantly clear, and I quote, "The principal reason for providing in paragraph 4 of the original text that the death sentence should not be carried out on pregnant women was to save the life of an innocent unborn child." Now, whatever we think about the death penalty, such concern for the baby is quite clear and of course should be welcomed. But what of the argument that the unborn, or at least some of them, are not persons and therefore not to be protected? Supporters of legal access to abortion, including the philosophers Peter Singer, Helga Kuhs and Michael Tooley, certainly accept the scientific evidence that the unborn are members of the human family. And a few years ago, when we were debating human embryo research in the British Parliament, pro-human embryo research scientists made it absolutely clear, yes, we are talking about a member of the human family who is alive and whose death will be caused by fatal embryo experimentation. Now, these philosophers, it's not simply that they don't believe that being a member of the human family is a sufficient reason to conclude that an individual has, by reason of that fact, the right to life. And history shows that attempts to disenfranchise some members of the human family from moral consideration has led to justifications of intolerable abuses of human rights, including slavery, genocide, abortion, infanticide, non-voluntary sterilisation, and non-voluntary and voluntary euthanasia of human beings. It was precisely a reaction to these abuses of human rights that the United Nations was brought into being on the basis of its charter, that never again could you take a category of human beings, disabled, Jews, whoever they may be, and you say, these people are not human. These people are not human because they're not persons. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, following the United Nations Charter, rejects discrimination against any members of the human family and requires the recognition of the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family. As far as human personhood is concerned, the Declaration does not allow discrimination on the basis of so-called human personhood. Article 2 asserts firmly that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this Declaration without distinction of any kind. And Article 30 commands that nothing in this Declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. Article 6 of the Universal Declaration deals with the matter of division of human beings into persons and non-persons. In these words, everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. So there is then general agreement that science has established that the unborn are members of the human family. There is agreement in international law that every member of the human family has the right to life and other fundamental human rights, all of which the state is required to protect impartially. Outside of this context, there is no agreement on what constitutes the philosophical notions of personhood, and no agreement as to when personhood begins and ends. Some say